Three of America's closest allies just delivered a devastating blow to Donald Trump's Middle East strategy, and the fallout is already beginning. The United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia have officially recognized a Palestinian state, directly defying Trump's explicit opposition and creating the biggest diplomatic crisis of his second term. This isn't just symbolic politics. This is a coordinated rebellion by America's most trusted partners, and it's sending shockwaves through Washington and Tel Aviv alike. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer made the announcement that Trump had desperately tried to prevent, saying the move is intended to revive hope of peace for Palestinians and Israelis. But here's what makes this so damaging for Trump. He saw it coming and couldn't stop it. Just last week, during his state visit to Britain, Trump publicly disagreed with Starmer's plans, telling reporters he had a disagreement with the Prime Minister on that score.
Now, as if to encourage continued conflict, some of this body is seeking to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities. But instead of giving in to Hamas's ransom demands, those who want peace should be united with one message: release the hostages now. We have to stop the war in Gaza immediately. We have to stop it. We have to get it done. We have to negotiate, immediately have to negotiate peace. We got to get the hostages back. We want all 20 back. Not only is the UN...
The president's own words at the UN General Assembly, where he strongly opposed any unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state and called it a reward for Hamas terrorists, now ring hollow as his closest allies reject his position entirely. Trump thought his personal intervention would be enough. He was wrong. The timing couldn't be worse for the American president. These announcements came just one day before the United Nations General Assembly, where even more countries are expected to follow suit. France is preparing to make its own recognition announcement, and Portugal has already joined the growing coalition. Trump's isolation is becoming impossible to hide. What's particularly striking is how coordinated this rebellion appears to be. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney didn't just recognize Palestine.
Carney just took questions from reporters after meeting with top officials there to get a vital trade relationship back on track. Evan Dyer has been watching it all, so Evan, can you bring us up to speed?
Adrian, the Canadian and Mexican leaders appear to have smoothed over the tensions that emerged following the election of Donald Trump when he succeeded in driving a wedge between the two countries with his tariff plans, causing some Canadian politicians to suggest that Mexico should be cut out of the CUSMA trade deal. These are two countries that face a common threat, and they seem to have decided they're stronger facing it together.
We are both undertaking massive transformations of our economy. Plan Mexico, Canada strong. Our efforts will be strengthened by working together.
Mexico and Canada want to do more on two fronts. First, work together to save North America-wide free trade by coordinating strategies for next year's review of CUSMA, the trade deal that replaced the original NAFTA 5 years ago.
How do we eliminate these tariffs that we both face prior to the end of the year so that we can have a fruitful discussion on the USMCA future beginning in 2026?
The two countries also have to cooperate without provoking the Trump administration.
They're going to be very careful to make sure that the visit is not portrayed as some kind of strategic meeting or ganging up in some way with the White House.
But both countries know they can't count on restoring normal trade with the U.S., and both are looking for new partners.
It's a chance for us to talk not just about the tariff dispute that's underway, but also what are we going to be able to do to deepen our bilateral relationships with each other. We've spent way too much time ignoring each other. Now it's time to do more.
President Sheinbaum said she wanted to strengthen maritime trade with Canada. Mexico is in the middle of a huge renewal of its infrastructure, including airports, seaports, and rail. But the Mexicans are concerned that Canada's ports aren't big enough to handle the volume of trade they'd like to see. Adrian, Mexican officials are even talking about becoming directly involved in the expansion of Canadian ports, perhaps even helping to build terminals dedicated to Canada-Mexico trade. Mexico is becoming a wealthier country. It's now the world's 12th biggest economy, and the government here wants to raise...
He directly criticized Israel's government, saying it was methodically working to prevent the prospect of a Palestinian state from ever being established. During his recent meeting with Mexican officials, Carney made clear that Canada was charting an independent course on Middle East policy, one that prioritizes humanitarian concerns over maintaining lockstep with Washington. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese framed his country's decision as part of a coordinated international effort to build momentum for a two-state solution. This wasn't three separate decisions. This was a planned diplomatic offensive against Trump's position. The implications extend far beyond the Middle East. These are countries that have stood with America through decades of conflicts, from World War II to Afghanistan. The UK is led by a Labour government, but one that has been careful to maintain strong ties with the United States. Canada and Australia are longtime Conservative allies.
What do you make of that?
Well, I don't think we have the same influence as we used to have. That's clear. But I think people are taking notice because we had for a long time aligned our position on Israel and Palestine to that of the United States and Israel. And so this is a big shift. It's one that I think other countries are taking note. They often did not understand what Canada's position had been in the past. And so I think this bodes well in terms of Canada's relations around the world. But I think we have to also be mindful of managing our relationship with our largest trading partner and our neighbor, the superpower that is the United States, as we do just that.
Louise Blais, former Canadian diplomat and Deputy Permanent Representative of Canada to the United Nations. Thank you for this. Appreciate it.
Former Canadian diplomat Louise Blais noted that Canada's shift away from U.S. alignment on Israel-Palestine is being noticed internationally and represents a significant evolution in Canadian foreign policy, though she cautioned about the delicate balance of managing relations with America as Canada's largest trading partner. When your closest allies publicly break with your foreign policy on such a sensitive issue, it signals a fundamental shift in global power dynamics. Trump's response has been predictably defensive. During his UK visit, he tried to minimize the disagreement, calling it one of our few disagreements, actually. But behind the scenes, his administration is scrambling to contain the damage. The president had built his Middle East strategy around unwavering support for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and now that strategy is crumbling in real time. Netanyahu's reaction reveals just how serious this diplomatic crisis has become. The Israeli leader called the recognition a massive prize to terror and vowed that there will be no Palestinian state west of the Jordan River. But Netanyahu's defiance can't hide the reality that Israel is becoming increasingly isolated on the world stage, and Trump's inability to keep his allies in line is a major factor. The broader context makes this even more damaging for Trump. More than 140 countries already recognize Palestinian statehood, and that number is growing rapidly. The war in Gaza has created mounting international pressure for a two-state solution, and Trump's administration has found itself on the wrong side of global opinion. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza, where more than 65,000 Palestinians have been killed according to local health authorities, has created images that have turned public opinion around the world. Trump's continued support for Israel's military campaign has put him at odds, not just with America's allies, but with growing segments of the American public as well. What makes this particularly problematic for Trump is that these aren't radical leftist governments making these decisions. When moderate, pro-Western governments feel compelled to break with American policy so publicly, it suggests Trump has badly miscalculated the international mood. The economic implications are also significant. Trump has repeatedly threatened trade consequences for countries that don't align with American foreign policy. He previously suggested that Canada's recognition of Palestinian statehood would hurt trade talks between the two countries. Now he's facing the prospect of trade wars with three of America's largest trading partners simultaneously. The diplomatic fallout is already spreading beyond these four countries. Belgium is expected to make a similar announcement during the UN General Assembly. Spain and Ireland, which have already recognized Palestinian statehood, are pushing for additional EU sanctions on Israel. Trump's strategy of isolating critics is backfiring spectacularly as the critics band together against American policy. Perhaps most damaging for Trump is how this undermines his claims of diplomatic strength. Throughout his campaign and early presidency, Trump boasted about his ability to negotiate with world leaders and command respect on the international stage.
You're never going to get them solved. Some were going for 31 years, two of them, 31, think of it, 31 years. One was 36 years. One was 28 years. I ended 7 wars. And in all cases, they were raging with countless thousands of people being killed. This includes Cambodia and Thailand, Kosovo and Serbia, the Congo and Rwanda, a vicious, violent war that was, Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, and Armenia and Azerbaijan. It included all of them. No president or prime minister, and for that matter, no other country has ever done anything close to that. And I did it in just 7 months. It's never happened before. There's never been anything like that. I'm very honored to have done it. It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen, but she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the 2 things I got from the...
He claimed to have ended 7 unendable wars in just 7 months, including conflicts that had been ongoing for decades, stating that no other president or country had achieved anything similar. Yet now, when it matters most, his closest allies are openly defying him. The timing also creates maximum embarrassment for Trump. These announcements came during the UN General Assembly, when the world's attention is focused on intern, national diplomacy. Trump will have to address the United Nations knowing that many of America's closest friends have just publicly rejected his Middle East policy.
In a period of just 7 months, I have ended 7 unendable wars. They said they were unendable. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them. What is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words. I have also been deeply engaged in seeking a ceasefire in Gaza. Unfortunately, Hamas has repeatedly rejected reasonable offers to make peace. We can't forget October 7th.
His recent speech at the UN, where he criticized the organization for being ineffective and accused it of funding an assault on Western countries and their borders, now seems particularly tone-deaf, given his inability to maintain unity among Western allies. Israeli officials are clearly frustrated with Trump's inability to maintain allied support. Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar called the recognitions outrageous and immoral, but his criticism implicitly acknowledges that Trump failed to prevent them despite having advance warning. The domestic political implications for Trump are also significant. American Jewish voters, who have been a key part of Trump's coalition, are watching their president lose international support for Israel in real time. Meanwhile, Arab American voters, who Trump has been trying to win back, are seeing concrete action from other Western leaders while Trump offers only rhetoric. The recognition by these 4 countries is largely symbolic in legal terms, but the symbolic power is enormous. When America's closest allies publicly declare that Palestinian statehood is legitimate and necessary, it undermines Trump's argument that such recognition rewards terrorism. Instead, it suggests that Trump's position is the extremist one. What's particularly concerning for Trump is that this appears to be just the beginning. French President Emmanuel Macron has been building momentum for broader European recognition of Palestinian statehood. Saudi Arabia is co-hosting events at the UN to promote the 2-state solution. Trump's isolation is likely to deepen in the coming weeks. The crisis also highlights Trump's broader foreign policy challenges. His transactional approach to international relations has alienated traditional allies while failing to produce meaningful results. The Middle East remains as unstable as ever, despite Trump's claims of bringing peace to the region. His Abraham Accords, once touted as a diplomatic breakthrough, now look insufficient in the face of the Gaza crisis. European leaders are clearly losing patience with Trump's approach to the conflict. The humanitarian situation in Gaza has created enormous pressure on Western governments to take action, and Trump's continued support for Israel's military campaign has made it impossible for allies to maintain unified positions. The recognition announcements also reveal the limits of Trump's personal diplomacy. His state visit to Britain was supposed to strengthen the special relationship between the two countries. Instead, Starmer used the visit to highlight areas of disagreement and then proceeded with his Palestinian recognition plan immediately after Trump left the country. The economic consequences of this diplomatic crisis could be significant. International investors are watching the breakdown in Western unity with concern. Trade relationships that have been stable for decades are now subject to political tensions. Trump's threats of economic retaliation against allies could backfire if those allies band together to reduce their dependence on American markets. The military implications are also worth considering. NATO unity has been a cornerstone of Western security policy for decades. When major NATO allies publicly break with American foreign policy positions, it raises questions about alliance cohesion that adversaries like Russia and China are certainly noting. Trump's response to this crisis will be closely watched. His tendency to escalate conflicts with allies could turn this diplomatic disagreement into a broader rupture in Western relationships. Alternatively, he could try to minimize the significance of these recognitions, but that would make him appear weak in the face of Allied defection. The Palestinian Authority has obviously welcomed these recognitions, with President Mahmoud Abbas calling them steps toward a just and lasting peace. But the real winner here might be countries like China and Russia, who can point to Western disunity as evidence that American leadership is declining. For Trump, this crisis represents a fundamental challenge to his foreign policy credibility. He came into office promising to restore American strength and leadership on the world stage. Instead, he's presiding over the most significant Allied rebellion against American Middle East policy in decades. The crisis also highlights the changing nature of international relations in the 21st century. Traditional alliance structures are being tested by issues like climate change, human rights, and regional conflicts. Trump's assumption that economic relationships would override political disagreements is proving naive. Looking ahead, this diplomatic crisis is likely to deepen. More countries are expected to recognize Palestinian statehood in the coming weeks. The UN General Assembly will provide a platform for further criticism of American policy. Trump will have to decide whether to double down on his current approach or find a way to rebuild relationships with alienated allies. The broader implications for American foreign policy are profound. If America's closest allies feel compelled to publicly break with American positions on major international issues, it suggests a fundamental shift in global power dynamics. The era of unquestioned American leadership may be coming to an end, and Trump's handling of this crisis will determine how quickly that transition occurs. What's clear is that Trump's Middle East strategy has suffered a major blow. His bet that unconditional support for Israel would bring stability to the region has backfired spectacularly. Instead of peace, there's an expanding war. Instead of allied unity, there's growing isolation. Instead of diplomatic success, there's international condemnation. The recognition of Palestinian statehood by the UK, Canada, Australia, and Portugal represents more than just a policy disagreement. It's a rejection of Trump's entire approach to international relations. And with more countries likely to follow suit, Trump's isolation is only going to get worse. For a president who promised to make America great again, presiding over the collapse of Allied support represents a devastating failure. The question now is whether Trump can find a way to rebuild those relationships, or whether this crisis marks the beginning of a broader realignment in global politics that leaves America increasingly alone.